You have tuned in to StephTalk TV. Here is my bonus episode on addiction. Welcome back to StephTalk TV. This is my conclusion to my episode on addiction. Parents, if you have an issue with substance abuse or addiction, please understand that your children know you. They'll either end up mimicking you or resenting you. One of the two, or both. You do not want their core memory of you or their core memories with you to be tainted by your disease. You want to give them actionable evidence that you love yourself, because the love that you give you, then you can give it to them. And that love means safety. But if you are not showing them love and you're feeding the disease, then the disease is going to bring them dis-ease. It can come in a way of headaches, wetting the bed, acting out at school, being overly talkative because the addiction is so loud at home they don't have a voice. Remember yourself as a child. Good, bad, and the ugly. You remember your parents, things that they did that you did not like, and the things that you loved the most about them. I speak from experience. My father was an alcoholic. But let's reel it back a little bit. Because in this bonus episode of my addiction series, I'll be discussing with you and sharing with you my story as being a child of an addict, the sister of an addict, and now a mother of a child struggling with addiction and mental illness. Oh yeah, my life's been active. But one thing I've learned is that this does not define me. It just impacted my life, made me a warrior. I'm here to inspire you and inform you, and to raise awareness as to how addiction impacts families. Like I said, I speak from experience. My father was an alcoholic, and his disease caused me dis-ease. Like I said before, the children, I acted out. But let me give you some backstory on my father. He didn't start drinking until the age of 25. It was his senior year of college, and he was a shy guy. So what happened is he would drink in order to release his inhibitions, and it made him the life of the party. And once he discovered that about himself, alcohol became one of his crutches. He was like a Jim Thorpe. He played every sport. He's on the Hall of Fame at Arizona State University. He surfed. He was a Renaissance man. Very supportive, loyal to my mother, loyal to our family. But his only caveat was that he had a disease, which was alcoholism. He wasn't belligerent. Sometimes he could be annoying, kind of like a dictator, aggressive with his verbiage. He never cussed us out or anything like that, but he and my mother would go at it because of the addiction. And that caused us quite a bit of stress, knowing that it annoyed her and was like a cloud looming over her head. It began to matriculate down to us children. My acting out looked like I was a pyromaniac. I would go outside and be aggressive. I was way too talkative at school. They had a new word for talking every time I went to school. Loquacious was one of their favorites. So I had my issues. I used to get migraine headaches. I had anxiety, all types of things. It would affect my belly. As a child, it really caused me a lot of anguish and pain and concern. And a part of me wanted it over. Seeing the angst that it caused my mother, you just get some type of understanding that there's something ain't right here. Even though we didn't suffer physical abuse or anything, him going through the illness, the sickness, caused us to be worried as children. A child should not have to worry about those things, but I did. I really did. And there were times where it would bother my mother so much that when I knew it did, I was like, let's get out of here. Why are we dealing with this? From 25 to 54, 29 years, my father struggled with alcoholism. One disease transferred to another. By the time he was 54, he had cancer in his spine that spread it to the weakest part of his body, which was his liver. The liver was the weakest part of his body due to alcoholism. I remember being younger and him having cirrhosis of the liver at about the age of 35. There were many times he went to get help, and we would see him win, and we were all happy. And then the disease would kick right back in. And you don't know as a child that it's a disease. There's an undercurrent. You're waiting for something negative to happen that just doesn't feel good to your family. And then when it finally comes, there's a cloud that looms over it, and it just begins to trickle down all of the negativity that comes with alcoholism and substance abuse. And to the children of addicts, the child that has a parent struggling with substance abuse, it is not your fault, honey. It has nothing to do with you. It's a disease. Your parent is sick and they need help. To add insult to injury, while my father was dealing with alcoholism, I had a brother who I loved dearly. Who struggled with substance abuse. He was a drug addict. His drug of choice was crack. And then that turned into meth. And it was very devastating for me. I remember the first time I ever saw my brother hit the crack pipe. I was 17 years old visiting him and his wife. He was trying to deal it and use it, all while being a banker. He was a banker at a very prestigious bank in Beverly Hills, extremely intelligent. We just lived on the wrong side of the tracks. He was exposed young to the wrong substance and then became an addict. And it was an uphill battle for the rest of his life. All my life, my brothers were my protectors. They made me feel secure. This older brother that I'm speaking of taught me how to drive. He taught me how to deal with guys, gave me great advice about men. He taught me how to embrace other cultures, different types of cuisines he could cook. He took care of me. At times when I was older, I broke my ankle. He came over to cook for me, to watch my kids. He took care of my brothers. Loved me, and I loved them. But unfortunately, this drug took its toll on him. And he would end up succumbing to his addiction in 2020 by overdose. That overdose sent me into a tailspin. But I want to say this to siblings of addicts: do not feel responsible for your sibling. Love them, support them, and treat them like a human being. You will have times where you want to judge them, but they have a disease and there's nothing that you can do about it but support them and believe that one day they'll get better. Do not take on the responsibility of your parents. If you are a young sibling with an older sibling who is struggling with substance abuse, love them. They have a sickness and it's up to them to get better. Having a sibling that is dealing with substance abuse can make you very anxious. But the difference is you can share your thoughts with them a little more. You could be a little more forthright with your thoughts. You tend to be judgmental. Like I said, you could talk to them, you can cuss them out. You can give them a piece of your mind, unlike your parent. It's just a little different. At some point when you become an adult, yes, you may say something to your parents. But when it's your sibling, right then it's very present. You're going to speak your mind to them because you just don't know what they're dealing with. And it's confusing. It hurts you. It's devastating. So I understand completely what it's like to deal with a sibling struggling with substance abuse. It has the same impact, if not more, on you as a parent. Because while that was happening, I had discovered 2 years prior, or a year and a half prior, that my son was struggling with substance abuse, methamphetamines, and alcohol. Let me just tell you this: nothing prepares you for being the parent of an addict. The grief is palpable. You hurt, mind, body, and soul, because you just want to see this child get better. So with my brother passing in 2020, I knew that my son was struggling with addiction since 2018. He was his senior year. He said he went to a party and there was someone in the restroom. I wanted to be the parent to let him have a little fun during his senior year. Let him go to a house party with some friends. Someone was in the restroom doing drugs, and he joined them. From that point on, his behavior was erratic. He had suicidal ideations, and at the same time, he was manifesting, because between the ages of 18 and 25, you begin to manifest whatever mental illness you're dealing with. His was bipolar, and the methamphetamines took it up a notch to schizophrenia. At this time, I was angry with God because my brother had passed away. And I had taken him to so many church services trying to help him get delivered or his healing, to no avail, not understanding that humans have free will. I wanted to fix it, and I wanted God to fix it. And I did not see the evidence of that with my brother. When it came to my son, I was hyper vigilant about getting him healed, fixing him. I was the quintessential codependent parent. He became my focus. My life was centered around getting him better, getting him clean, getting him back on track, because he's young. He'll get over it. He can shake this. I should have looked at my history, but I didn't know because I was codependent and I believed I could fix it. So we went through a number of rehabs and I became a butthead. I was smoking weed left and right because my anxiety was off the roof after 2020. I just wanted to find peace. I was angry with God, so I wasn't going to church. I wasn't praying like I should have. I just began to take up practices that I thought were going to help me heal, and they were new agey and a hot mess. Didn't work for me. When my son turned 20, I said, okay, listen, I had heard about these psychedelic journeys that could help people overcome addiction like that. No, didn't work for him. You see, when a person has their mind made up that they're going to do drugs, they're going to do them. And it's a mental thing. You heard Brian speak on the mind of an addict in episodes 2 and 3. Check it out. It's something that a person who does not have an addiction or the disease, because I did not have the disease. I did smoke marijuana for 2 years, but I stopped. I would drink and I stopped. But when it comes to a person with a disease, their mind is wired differently, and it almost becomes hardwired to need or want the substance of choice. So it was hard for me. I was trying to get this boy fixed. He had gone to rehab several times, in and out, but it became a hamster wheel for me. I was on this hamster wheel. He would go missing for anywhere from 4 to 30 days. And I am at home worried, sick. A child that was completely obedient, raised well, no problems. He had ADD. There were those issues, but nothing like this. When he would come home, he'd be coming down off the drugs. And then I had to do my research on what he was dealing with. And it was shadow people and hallucinations, erratic behavior, outbursts, his body locking up, having to call paramedics, all the while my daughter is watching this. His younger sibling, who was his best friend and loved him immensely, watched her brother take a downward spiral. And it was devastating for her, and it caused her anxiety. I did not want her to feel like she was responsible for her brother's healing, because that was not her business. She matured swiftly, but it was not without its drawbacks. She went through quite a bit of a devastation knowing that her brother was using drugs. Eventually, he would begin to act out, become very disrespectful, and I'm not the one to do that with. I wasn't afraid. I was more afraid for him than myself. I didn't want to have to call the police on my son, but there were things that he did that was completely outrageous. I was losing things. He wasn't a thief, but it was costing me. Rehab was expensive. Every time he went in, he needed new clothes. There were times I picked up my child from off the streets with no shoes and none of the clothes he had on before he left. It is a roller coaster ride that I don't wish on anybody. And I'm telling this story to raise awareness to parents. If they're an adult child, my advice to you would be to allow them to go through their process. They're going to have to. You can try to keep them in the house. Oh yeah, me and a few of my friends have tried that with our children on drugs. We try to keep them in the house. We try to keep them content. You can't. The drug drives them. It becomes their motivation. Let them go if they're not willing to stay sober. Protect your other children and exact tough love. If they are causing a disruption in your household, they have to go. It got to the point where I had to leave the state because I realized it wasn't my fault. So I let go. I hadn't seen my mother in a year and a half and I missed her. And I decided to pick up and move out of state. And it was the best move that I made. because although he's still struggling with addiction, he takes responsibility. He's not in denial, and he does what he has to do to get help. He knows all the resources necessary to get the help that he needs. It's a waiting game. And you will have to, like I said, exact tough love. And let me tell you something. Tough love is tough on everybody. Especially the parent who just wants to see you, this child that you still see as your baby. They're still your baby. I pray, and I had to start to work, get me back. His addiction was costing me my health. I was having bad stomach pains and aches. Mentally, I was exhausted. I was losing sleep. I had insomnia. When your child goes missing for 30 days and shows back up like, okay, I'm a little tattered, but did you make some spaghetti? It's hard. And you, as a parent who really loved your child and cared for them, yeah, you're going to give them a meal. You're going to let them come home, get showered up. Hopefully they're back to normal. And this hamster wheel, I rode for a good 4 years. Then I had to hop off. Until one day I was sitting on my couch and I clearly heard the Lord tell me, you're working too hard. You're trying your best to figure this out. Give him to me. Take my yoke upon you. Learn of me. For I'm humble and lowly at heart. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that day I surrendered my life back to Christ. And I have been peaceful, even in the midst of sometimes worrying. When I find myself worrying, I pray and I write in my journal and I vent and I trust God, because that's all I can do. And I hope that this helps you. But if you're a parent with an adult child, like I said before, let them go. Exact tough love. If they're willing to get help, awesome. Do everything, support them anyway. Just don't enable the addiction. If you have children under the age of 17, do like I did, exhaust all the possibilities to help them get clean. And if it transfers over into adulthood, you're going to have to let them go, unfortunately. God said, thou shalt not put no other gods before me. Being a codependent as a believer, being laser focused on being his solution, caused me to idolize my child's addiction. I worried. I did everything that I could to try to fix it. His disease caused me dis-ease. And it's time for me to get myself back, be the best mother that I can be for both of them. Let them see me taking care of myself, loving God, trusting God, and the process. Be strong and may God be with you. Thank you. This concludes our 3-part series on addiction. Thank you for tuning in to StephTalk TV. Stay tuned for more.